Welcome back to Devil's Advocate, and the second part is this first special interview with Mr. Jaswant Singh on his forthcoming biography of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Mr. Jaswant Singh, let's turn to Jinnah and Pakistan. Your book shows that right through the 20s and the 30s, and maybe even the early years of the 40s, Pakistan for Jinnah was more of a political strategy, less of a target and a goal. Did he consciously, from the very start, seek to dismember and divide India?
I don't think it was dismemberment. He wanted space for the Muslims. And in Pakistan, he could just not define Pakistan, ever. Geographically, it was a vague idea. That's why ultimately it became a moth-eaten Pakistan. He had ideas about certain provinces which must be Islamic, and 1/3 of the seats in the central legislature must be Muslim.
So Pakistan was in fact a way of finding, as you call it, space for Muslims.
He wanted space in the central legislature and in the provinces and protection of the minorities so that the Muslims could have a say in their own political, economic, social destiny.
And that was his primary concern, not dividing India or breaking up the country.
No, he in fact went to the extent of saying, all right, we went to the extent of almost 20%, all right, let it be a Pakistan within India.
A Pakistan within India was acceptable to him. So in other words, Pakistan was often code for space for Muslims.
That's right. From what I have written, I find that it was a negotiating tactic, because he wanted certain provinces to be with the Muslim League. He wanted a certain percentage in the central legislature. If he had that, there would not have been a partition.
Would you therefore say that when people turn around and say Jinnah was communal, he was a Hindu hater, a Hindu basher, that they are mistaken and wrong?
No, he was not a Hindu hater, but he had great animosity with the Congress party and Congress leadership. He said so repeatedly. I have no enmity against the Hindu.
Do you, as his author, believe him when he says so?
How do I? I don't live at the same time as him.
No, but you've made
I go by what his contemporaries have said. I go by what he himself says, and I reproduce it.
Let's come to this business of using Pakistan to create space for Muslims. Your book shows how repeatedly people like Rajagopalachari, Gandhi and Azad were understanding of the Jinnah need or the Muslim need for space. Nehru wasn't. Nehru had a European inherited centralized vision of how India should be run. In a sense, was Nehru's vision of a centralized India a problem that eventually led to partition?
Jawaharlal Nehru was not always that. He became that after his European tour of the 20s. Then he came back imbued with as Madhu LeMay puts it, imbued with the spirit of socialism. And he was all for centralized, highly centralized India.
And a highly centralized India denied the space that Jinnah and the Muslims were looking for.
Because highly centralized India meant that the dominant party was the Congress party. He in fact said there are only two powers in India, the Congress party and the British.
That attitude, in a sense, left no room for Jinnah and the Muslim League in India.
That is what made Jinnah repeatedly say, but there is a third force. The Congress could have dealt with the Moplas and the others. There were other Muslims.
So it was this majoritarian attitude of Nehru that actually left no room for Jinnah.
It became a contest between excessive majoritarianism, exaggerated minorityism, and giving the referee's whistle to the British.
But was the exaggerated minorityism a response to the excessive majoritarianism of Congress?
In part, also a response to the historical circumstances.
If the final decisions had been taken by people like Gandhi, Rajagopalachari or Azad, could we have ended up with a united India?
Yes, I believe so. We could have. We would have wanted, Gandhi said, you British go home. We will settle this amongst ourselves. We will find a Pakistan. In fact, he said it until the last AICC meeting.
It was therefore Nehru's centralizing vision that made that extra search for united India difficult at the critical moment.
He continued to say so. But subsequently, after partition, he began to realize what a great mistake it had been.
He realized his mistakes, but it was too late by then. It had happened.
It was too late. I think the most moving example of the admission of that mistake, I'm not talking of the other, his biographies and others, but a letter that he wrote to late Nawab Sahib Bhopal,
where he accepts this quite clearly.
when I quote this in part, it reflects on the greatness of Nehru as an Indian individual, but it also questions the efficacy of the first Prime Minister of India.
Let's end this first interview there. Tomorrow in the second part, I want to talk to you about the relationship that you paint between the early Jinnah and the Gandhi, and the questions you raise about partition and the predicament of those Muslims left behind in India. That's part 2 of this special 2-part interview. But for tonight, goodbye, good night.